The vibes are sky high surrounding the Philadelphia Phillies after just recently finishing off a sweep of the Texas Rangers to push their NL East lead to 5.5 games. However, there is some concern with ace Zack Wheeler after his start day was pushed back 2 days due to a sore shoulder, and the issue being evident when he did take the field. I do want to reflect on why I do think there are some big picture concerns with Wheeler, why he does deserve credit for gutting it out in the way that he did, and why I think the Phillies need to act on this in the short term. So let's get right into the topic of today. Again, in the overall, the grand scheme of things, life is good in the Phillies world. The Mets are struggling in a major way. They've built up a 5.5 game lead in the NL East there, and they are playing some really convincing baseball. But Zack Wheeler, in many ways, is the straw that stirs the drink of this pitching staff, and this is the first time all season that we begin to see a bit of this. Now, to reflect on his performance today, he went 5 innings strong, allowed 3 hits, 2 earned runs there, 3 walks, 7 strikeouts, just 83 pitches. And to give a little bit more in depth here, that we do have for Wheeler, that he tallied 19 whiffs, a 46.3% whiff percentage there, a 34.0 chase percentage, and a 34.9% CSW there. And the quote after the game that I think is very telling on the experience here is, when most pitchers are down 2 miles per hour on their fastball, it can be a recipe for a disaster. Zack Wheeler isn't most pitchers. Quote, that's the type of pitcher he is. Even when he doesn't have his best stuff, he's going to give us a chance to win a game. And that is really the story of today. Of Zack Wheeler still did everything in his power, despite not being the best version of himself, to give this Phillies team a chance. Now, with that being said, this team is designed for him to be the clear ace and best pitcher on this staff, which he has been for the duration of his tenure in Philadelphia. However, if these shoulder issues are something that is going to linger, that does change the outlook for the remainder of the season. And to highlight exactly this dip in velocity that we were speaking on, I did want to pull up, shout out to Adam Aronson of Philly Voice, who did break this down in a nice table there, that you can see his average on the season overall versus what his average velocity was today. With the fastball on the season, 96.2 miles per hour. Today, 94.2 miles per hour. The sinker, 95.5 miles per hour. Today, 93.0. The cutter, typically 91.9 on a regular basis. Today, 90.1. The splitter from 87.3 to 85.1. The sweeper dipping from 83.9 to 82.1. And the curveball going from 81.2 to 79.9. Now, in the grand scheme of things, Zack Wheeler is still going to be an excellent pitcher. And him at 75% of himself, which is probably where I would put things today, who knows, that could be higher, could be lower. We'll see what exactly he's dealing with here, is still better than a vast majority of pitchers in the major leagues. But the Phillies are counting this guy to be the guy, and he has been every bit of that during his tenure in Philadelphia. The reason that I think that this is the time for the Phillies to act is because they have a cushion. The Mets look like they are on straight life support right now, blowing a 5-0 lead to lose another game in fairly catastrophic fashion. They are playing just bad baseball from every single angle of it, and that is the team that we're looking over our shoulder in the NL East for. The Braves have fallen off the map. The Nationals, nothing to worry about there. It is between the Mets and the Phillies for what this race will be, and there is that now 5.5 game cushion. Now, the Phillies actually find themselves in a pretty good spot to handle this. And the reason that I say this, we know who Zack Wheeler is as a pitcher. And to reflect on what his stats have been for the season, he's pitched in 22 games, a 64.3% win-loss percentage. He's gone 139.2 innings, allowed 17 home runs, struck out 182 while only allowing 100 hits. That comes out to 6.4 hits per 9 inning, a 2.64 ERA, and a .916 whip there. That is excellent stuff, borderline Cy Young stuff, and he is very much in that race. However, the big picture here is winning a World Series, and that is why you need to limit the situation right now. The positive of this is all imaging on Zack Wheeler is clean, that he did get his shoulder checked out, did go through MRIs, get the whole training staff inspection there, and it is all signals go, that there is nothing structurally wrong with him. What I think probably the sense is this guy's pitched a lot of innings, gone deep in a lot of ball games. I know Rob Thomson, when asked about it directly, spoke pretty directly about the complete game bothering him. And Rob kind of joked that I hope another pitcher doesn't throw a complete game all year. I think the Johan Duran addition does change the equation there. Even as recently as last week, a guy like Christopher Sanchez, who could have gone out that ninth and would have gone out that ninth if there was no Johan Duran as an option there. But now that he is, it does create the structure of this team. Now, with all that being said, you have to roll out 5 starters. And now is the time of the season, with a little bit of cushion behind it, and with the playoffs beginning to inch closer on the horizon, about 45 games left. I forget the exact count, but we are in that range of the season with it. you got to prioritize rest for these guys, and Zack Wheeler should be right at the top of the list. Now, to take a look at the pitching depth chart, there is a chance that this works itself out perfectly. Obviously, Zack Wheeler right at the top of the list and the main topic of this video. I do think this guy needs, whether it is a real IL stint or a phantom IL stint, I think this guy needs a couple days and possibly weeks away from baseball to get that shoulder up to exactly what its peak is. Jesus Luzardo has certainly gone through his struggles, but is not a guy that we are eliminating from the rotation whatsoever. He's going to need to deliver and pull his weight for however long Wheeler is out if they choose to go this direction. I personally feel strongly that it would be very much a mistake if you have Zack Wheeler just to continue to pitch through this. I think it was a good thing that they did by extending his rest period 2 days, but obviously the results were not super promising there. The velocity just did not bounce back in the way that you do hope. Now, to bring it back to the rest of the pitching staff, you got Luzardo, you got Christopher Sanchez, who very well could catch Zack Wheeler in this Cy Young race if he is set to miss some time. We're beginning to get the Tariq Skubal conversations as a comparison for Christopher Sanchez, which I'm absolutely loving there. The changeup in itself kind of very similar in the way that they throw it, the way that they use it, and Skubal himself saying that Sanchez has a better one, which I think is a pretty cool storyline. Ranger Suarez, a rock-solid concrete part of the rotation in a way that I was not certain would be the case for most of the year. I did wonder if he was a guy who could get squeezed and moved into more of one of the, swing/fringe/rotation type roles. I still think that is in play from a postseason perspective, but they're going to need Ranger for now, and he's done exactly what we expect from him. Ranger Suarez still being that guy, and he's had a couple velocity dips throughout the season as well. Taijuan Walker, while he is not the guy that any team is lining up and fearing against, he's been totally fine for this Phillies team this year, and I think you need to continue to count on that. Now, Aaron Nola is the clear-cut solution there. This guy is making his rehab starts, beginning to work his way back, and I don't get the sense that they believe or he's ready to be injected into the starting rotation as of like tomorrow, but he's beginning to get close, and if that is the swap you make, that you throw Nola in, you pull Wheeler out, and roll with that 5-man rotation for maybe 2 weeks or whatever the case may be, I do think that makes sense. The other factor that I think should be brought to mind here is Andrew Painter. Now, we are not in the best spot to be having the bring him up to the majors conversation. The reason I say that is he also pitched today, and the stat line not quite pretty here. That he went 4.1 innings, allowed 9 hits, 7 earned runs, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts, 2 home runs allowed across his 87 pitches thrown. I don't know what the Phillies do about Andrew Painter. We've heard, and Dave Dombrowski himself been very much on record, that as of spring training was talking about July-ish as the target date for bringing him up to the major leagues, that all systems were go towards this is the year that he makes his debut. If he's not performing at a major league level, there is no reason to rush this guy. Now, there is a part of me that does wonder, could this be a sink or swim type of situation? That it is not a one-for-one track record, that guys that are successful in the minor leagues are successful in the majors in the same way that there are guys that struggle in the minors, some top prospects that all of a sudden they figure things out. For Andrew Painter specifically, this is a guy less than a year or a little over a year removed from Tommy John surgery, still pitching himself back, that he had not faced live hitters in almost 2 seasons because of the arm issue that he was dealing with here. I do think they should handle him a bit with kid gloves. And I think, frankly, it was pretty unrealistic from the start to believe a guy that has yet to make his major league debut could be any sort of difference maker from a postseason perspective. Now, with that being said, if you need another arm and you think this guy needs an injection of life, I do think there should at least be conversations about that. Just looking at the numbers, I'm not going to sit here and act like I've watched every single one of Andrew Painter's starts, but I've checked in here and there, and it does not scream to me like a guy that is making his case for I belong in the majors right now. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. He's 22 years old. He's still very early in this, and again, they should be taking the long view for him. I do believe that it means something that the Phillies had him completely off the table in any sort of trade talks at the deadline there. I also am kind of the mindset of some guys do not always work out, that we should not just hitch our wagon to this blindly and believe he's going to be the next guy, but nonetheless, this is a conversation for another day. If they believe Andrew Painter could make a difference in this rotation right now, or just want to see him against major league batters, I think now is a perfect opportunity to do that, but I don't get the sense that that is the direction the organization will go. I still think it's in play that the Phillies try and make Zack Wheeler just pitch through this. That do wonder, maybe this is a bit of a dead arm situation, that it wakes up on the other side and he's just got to keep plugging. I know Zack Wheeler directly, very much a creature of habit, that he was a guy that was against the 6-man rotation, which is something that I have preached and believed in to a major extent for this very reason, that it limits wear and tear. It doesn't ask guys to pitch quite the number of innings. That does take a toll throughout the length of a season here. But nonetheless, I do think this is a problem the Phillies need to deal with in the short term here. You need Zack Wheeler to be pitching at his peak level come October. I don't care how Zack Wheeler pitches for the rest of August or the beginning of September here. This has to be prioritizing how you get this guy to his peak when the moments are the largest, and that does not mean game 3 against the Texas Rangers. I'm appreciative of Zack Wheeler for pitching through it. I think he deserves credit for how gutsy the performance was today. A guy who clearly did not have his best stuff and still allowed the team an opportunity to win, but nothing looked easy for him today, and that is not the Zack Wheeler that we expect. He's an interesting blend of an ace, is that he does not have like that signature pitch where, you know, what you knew you're getting, but what he is a horse, man. That dude's just going to dig in, throw it by you, and do the same thing inning after inning, batter after batter there. They need that version of Zack Wheeler come playoff time, and I do think every step that's possible that they decide internally is the best pathway to getting there, they need to take in the short term. Now is the time where you have a little bit of cushion. You have 5.5 game lead in the division here. You have the arms to make a couple moves or make a couple adjustments with what the rotation will be. You have options in the table in a way that I have not felt about this Phillies franchise in quite some time. So now it's time to act and adjust accordingly. Zack Wheeler is incredibly important to this Phillies baseball team, and you got to make sure that he's ready to deliver his best stuff when the moment is the largest. So we will see what ultimately happens from here for the Phillies, but my panic meter has certainly creeped up a couple notches after today's performance. Again, I do think it was the right call to give him a bit of an extended rest, but the fact that he did not bounce back after 2 additional days does mean to me that they need to act on that in the short term. So let me know if you guys are on the same page, and what would your adjustment be? In my ideal world, I do think it is just a clean swap of put Aaron Nola in, take Zack Wheeler out, and maybe you do the same with the Christopher Sanchez, the Jesus Luzardos, the Ranger Suarez, once that Wheeler is ready to return. It is time to prioritize health a little bit. There is potentially a deep playoff run brewing that I do think that this Phillies team has taken their collective game up another notch in recent weeks here, and that's important. That's positive. We should view that as an exciting thing, but you got to make sure you're protecting yourself and giving yourself the ideal chance. So we will see what ultimately they do from here, but once again, do want to hear what your guys' ideal fix would be in the comments. What do you do with the rotation from now, or am I overreacting? Could this just been a bad outing for Zack Wheeler that he did not quite have it in his shoulder? I think that would be a bit naive to buy into that thinking. That's where I'm at right now. But let me know what you guys think below. As always, appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning in. If you have not already, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like on this video here. I'll be back, dog, with you next time right here on Phillies Digest. Peace.